What is up, Scream Team? Zach Cherry here, and today I am going to be ranking the Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and Urban Legend franchises. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel, comment down below what your rankings are, and I've also included the link to this template in the description, so if you want, you can go and make your own ranking. Anyway, let's get right into it here. I've got 5 tiers. As per usual, I've titled them after quotes from these movies, so at the very bottom we have,
"That was just awful."
That quote pretty much speaks for itself. Above that in the yellow is,
"Stand him up."
We gotta stand it up for, I guess, people to tolerate it. Right in the middle is,
"I'm fine. Yeah, up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional."
and yeah, I think that this is very middle of the road. Above that in the orange is,
"That is so moral majority."
which, I guess is, like, this is the really good stuff, but, is it that good? And then in the red, which I guess is the best, is,
"It's beautiful. It's so f***ing clean, isn't it?"
which, again, it speaks for itself. So going in chronological order here, we're gonna start with the original Scream in 1996. This is the one that started it all, and there's no other way around this. This is a 5-star movie for me. This is perfect. Wes Craven was a genius. Beyond Scream, just like every decade of horror, he was doing crazy shit and just like reinventing the wheel. And there's just something so unique about his career that far into it, he was still able to make a comeback and make what is arguably the best movie of his career. Now, next up is I Know What You Did Last Summer. This came out in 1997. I think that this movie is a little overrated, personally. I think that it has a great cast. The 4 of them are very iconic. I think the movie's kind of boring. It starts off really excellent. I think that the opening, like the first act, really, everything with the accident and then their lives coming together again a year later is all really solid stuff. But then the movie kind of meanders into this really slow burn investigation. Sarah Michelle Gellar is the standout here. And, once she's kind of out of it, I'm just not very interested in everything that's happening in the climax. So I'm fine with this movie. I just think it's overhyped. Now, also in 1997 is Scream 2. You guys have kind of called me out on this. Clearly, I favor Scream 2, and I don't know why, I tried to deny it for so long, but it is, and I would put this at the top. I think that it does that rare thing that sequels don't usually do, where it just outdoes everything from the original. I think the story is so much more immensely interesting. They're able to raise the stakes. The suspense set pieces are just so much more grand scale than they were in the first movie. Just the theatrics, the drama of it all. The comedy is even funnier. And you know me, I love my Ghostface killers. Billy and Stu in the original are great, but I kind of prefer Mickey and Mrs. Loomis. They're just like a very kooky, offbeat duo that was very unexpected, and I think that just both of them independently of one another are great killers. So this is my favorite of the Scream franchise. Now we're coming into 1998, and the first one here is Urban Legend. Now, a lot of people kind of brushed this one off at the time as just being kind of a blatant ripoff of Scream, and I could not disagree more with that analysis. I don't think that this movie has really any resemblance to Scream at all. It's not following any sort of meta narrative. This is straight up 80s slasher homage territory, and it's doing a really cool thing where it's taking urban legend stories and basing a serial killer around that. It has nothing to do with Scream. I think that the only similarities are really the marketing of just sort of a young 20-somethings cast and the poster and all that. Is it as effective as Scream? No, but I think it's really close. I think that Jamie Blanks, who directed this and also directed Valentine, is really an exceptional filmmaker. So I actually have a very high opinion of Urban Legend. I also think that the killer in this movie is really great. So this is one to absolutely check out. It's just a really fun movie, and I love slasher movies set on college campuses as well, so that's another boon to this one. Also in 1998 we have I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. I just don't really care about this franchise all that much, but I do think that the sequel is better. I know a lot of people would disagree with me. They think that this movie is really bad, and I think that, for all intents and purposes it is, but I really kind of love that camp aspect to it. The first movie like was very dour. It took itself very seriously. This one knows how to have fun. And I think that once they kind of get to the Bahamas, the story really takes off. It's just like high octane, non-stop. There's just so many kills, one after the other. The pace keeps going and it doesn't let up. The only complaint that I would really have, which is, similar to the original movie, is that I don't think that the killer or killers in this movie are all that interesting. We don't really get the big grandiose monologue that we do from the Scream movies or even Urban Legend. So the climaxes of these movies have always been a bit of a letdown, and then it kind of goes into like the silly nightmare sequence cliffhanger at the end. I think that it's on par with the original, but I would put this above it. I like it slightly better just because it knows how to have fun. After that, we have Scream 3. We're now into the year 2000. And this was a movie that, I think when I started this channel, I was like probably a little bit down on it, but I've really come around to Scream 3 in the last 5 years or so, just like reevaluated it. I think that my initial criticisms were that it, does tend to be a little goofy, all of the Hollywood stuff with like Gale and Dewey and Parker Posey, which not that it's bad, like I think that it's so entertaining, but you still do have the Sidney Prescott stuff, and that's kind of like the peak of her storyline over the first 3 movies. So it really does culminate in a great payoff for her story, which I was never able to really appreciate just because I was so bogged down by the tonal inconsistency of everything. And now I guess maybe with the perspective of seeing the newer movies, it's really kind of put this one up like higher in standing for me. So I think that this is top tier category. It's not as good as 1 and 2 for me, but I would put this in It's So Effing Clean. Now, 2000, we also had Urban Legends Final Cut. I always get so annoyed that they added an S onto the end of Urban Legend. This movie is interesting for quite a few reasons. I don't think it's very good. I did get the chance to watch it quite a few times this past couple of weeks because I did cover it over on my podcast, The Cherry Picker. And it really feels like the problem with this movie is that it's a bad script, and it really needed probably, 2 more drafts to really kind of hone in on what it is. I guess my main gripe, which it's not really an urban legend movie. The first one obviously follows the idea of a serial killer basing their crimes on urban legends. This one takes place at a film school, and it doesn't really have anything to do with urban legends. It's more of a Hitchcock homage piece. There are things about this movie that really work well for it, but mostly it's just like a lot of misfires and not the best direction. I feel that John Ottman, who also composed and edited this, was very ambitious and had an interesting vision for the movie, but I don't think any of it really kind of materialized in the way that it was supposed to. There is a sequence that I really love, which is the most urban legend of it all, where they do the kidney heist thing. And this was actually an afterthought. They did this in post-production, so this was an added scene, but it really kind of heightens the horror of the film because there's really not a lot in it. I think that they were trying to go for more of a thriller, but even as a thriller, it doesn't work. So I'm kind of torn on this one. I think that it probably belongs in Stand Him Up, but I'm probably gonna regret this after. I'm gonna put it in I'm Fine, because the thing is, I don't get bored of this movie. I think that it is very interesting. I think it's an interesting premise. It just really needed a lot more care and attention and several more rewrites. 2005, we had a straight-to-video sequel, or straight-to-DVD, Urban Legends Bloody Mary. I actually never saw this movie, so I can't legitimately rank it, so I'm just gonna skip over this one altogether. I do want to see it at some point, but as far as I know, it's like more of a supernatural story, so it's like even more disconnected from the franchise than the second one was. So then that brings us to I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer, and I've seen it probably twice now. I saw it like a long time ago when it first came out, and I watched it recently in preparation of the new I Know What You Did Last Summer, and this is just awful in every sense of the word. There's just so much wrong with this movie. There really is like very little connection connective tissue to the first two movies, but I mean, it's also just a really low budget straight to DVD sequel. But, you know, even in that regard, I've seen straight to DVD sequels that have low budgets that are, you know, actually not terrible. And this one is just really hard to watch. Like, it looks ugly. There's like absolutely no color in it. It's just like been desaturated of everything. Some very like questionable cinematography. The editing is just atrocious. The characters are non-entities. None of this movie makes any sense either. Like, that's another thing. It's so baffling and ridiculous. And it also is like set in Colorado. Like, it's a ski resort town, nowhere near any bodies of water, but it's not even set in wintertime. It's like in the middle of the summer. So it's just like a very uninspired location. I don't think that there was really any thought put into anything in this movie at all. So this is really the bottom of the barrel. Now we're heading into 2011. We've got Scream 4. I know that a lot of people don't love this one. Like, it is very polarizing. I find that like the people who love it really love it, and the people who don't hate it. It's a flawed movie, but I still enjoy watching it. I also like, I prefer the additional scenes that were cut out to be like added back in. I know that there are extended versions floating around out there, and they really add context to the characters, like especially like Jill's storyline. You know, in terms of the DNA of what this franchise is and who the characters are, it was like a bit of a misstep, but I still buy it. Like, I believe that, okay, this is somewhere where, you know, Sydney and Gale and Dewey could be 10 years later. And I love the inclusion of new characters like Kirby. I think that Jill as a killer was a very novel twist. But I think what I love most about Scream 4 is that it might be one of the smartest films in the franchise, at least from like a meta-textual standpoint, and how its themes of remakes kind of tie into where we kind of were in the genre at that time, and just like how everything sort of plays into the narrative with the characters. It also kind of introduced the idea of social media and influencers way before that was even a thing. So it's a movie that was kind of ahead of its time, and I don't think that it was really as well received as it should have been. And obviously the marketing for the movie wasn't all that great, and that's why it didn't find as much success as the other Scream movies did, but I still enjoy it every time I see it. I think that, you know, I would put it in That Is So Moral Majority. I would put it under Urban Legend. I think Urban Legend is a better movie. But, you know, it was very clear that Wes Craven this time around did have his hands tied with everything that Miramax and the Weinsteins were putting their creatives through. So I think that in spite of all of that, you know, Wes Craven still manages to shine through a little bit, not as brightly as he did in the first three Scream movies. But I don't think that this movie is a slog like, you know, some of the other ones here. That brings us to Scream 5 2022. I watched this again recently. I haven't had a lot of desire to revisit 5 and 6 in the last couple of years, like after 6 came out. And I watched Scream 5 and Scream 6 with my mom. She had never seen them, and I was not having a good time. She wasn't having a good time. Like, these movies have no rewatchability to me. I feel like they're just the most perfunctory experiences that like a Scream movie could be. These are still very competently made movies, but they don't feel like Scream movies to me. They feel like something completely different. When Scream 5 first came out, I really did love it, but it just, every rewatch, the fun just like got sucked out of it. I don't even know how to explain it. It doesn't hold up. There's so many things that when I go back and watch the first 4 Scream movies, I always notice something new. And here, it just feels very paint by numbers. There's certainly a fluidity to the movie, but I don't think that any of the attention to detail is there, and that is very important when you're crafting such a complex murder mystery. I find so many continuity errors and just like illogical things that really frustrate me, and I know that this is something that is it's my brain, and not everyone agrees with that. But there are certain things that when I'm watching a movie and if I see something that takes me out of it, it's really hard to get back into the movie or look at it in the way that I once did. It's just the magic has worn off. And that has sadly happened with Scream 5. You know, right now, like I'm looking at this and like I'm thinking I'm fine. Like, do I like Urban Legends Final Cut better than this? Here's the thing. I don't think that Scream 5 is a worse movie than Urban Legends Final Cut. I think actually both of them are not very scary. Like, there's not a lot of tension to them. But I think that, you know, while Urban Legends is a horrible execution of a very interesting concept, Scream 5 is a very average execution of a mediocre concept. And that's kind of where my value system for movies is coming in a lot. Like, it comes back to the script and the story. And I think the fact that Scream 5, for all intents and purposes, is just like retreading so much of what that first movie is, but it doesn't really add anything to the franchise. So, I might regret this, but, you know, who gives a shit? I'm going to put it in Stand Him Up. After that, we've got Scream 6, which I feel that even though it's a little bit more high octane and there's a lot more going on than in Scream 5, I think that it takes all of the issues that I have with Scream 5 and just doubles down on them and makes it worse. I think that the logic was even further out the window. I think that a misconception that, you know, was sort of introduced with Scream 5 and moving on to Scream 6 is that these are more comedies than they are horror. And while there is comedy in the first 4 Scream movies, and, you know, it's really good comedy, it's kind of incidental to the plot. Like, it's comedy that's born out of the situations there. Whereas Screams 5 and 6 kind of push comedy to the forefront. And it just sort of becomes like setting up certain things for a gag, which, you know, doesn't necessarily pay off. And there's just so much fan service as well that it takes me out of it. But I would say that, again, this is a movie that I can't rewatch. Like, I feel that once I put it on, I can telegraph in my head, like, what happens next. Just from memory, where I know, like, all the Scream movies inside and out, but when I sit down to watch the Wes Craven films, I'm so engrossed in the story that I'm not thinking ahead, I'm in the moment. And that's inherently the issue that I have with 5 and 6, is that I can never just live in the moment of whatever scene that we're on. I'm always just thinking of like, oh, this is gonna happen next. And nothing is really moving along organically. It's just all of these sort of like contrived scenarios, you know, for the sake of like a cheap thrill. And that's what really bothers me. And then, of course, the killer reveal and the motive and all that. And, you know, at least like I can have fun with what the killers were doing in Scream 5. I think that was, you know, a very novel approach and just sort of like an interesting commentary on the horror genre and horror fandoms in general. Here, it feels the most repetitive, and I just don't think that the script was very good, and I don't think that this was made with the intention of living up to the heights that this franchise could climb to. So for me, Scream 6 is a stand him up kind of movie, because that's kind of what I have to do to justify watching this. And then finally we got in 2025, I Know What You Did Last Summer. Now keep in mind that I only watched this once. I do want to watch it again and just sort of see how it, you know, holds up. Right now I'm kind of unsure. The movie is definitely having fun, but I think that it's such a mess. You know, I talked about how Urban Legends Final Cut was a huge mess. I think that this is a mess on an even grander scale. I think that it was just sort of this smorgasbord of all of these components that really didn't mesh with one another and just sort of being forced together, just like crammed into the story, and nothing works and everything like contradicts itself. And in a way, it's like this train wreck where I can't keep my eyes or my mind off of it. Like, I'm just so fascinated by how badly it all came together. But, you know, it's not good. And I wanted to like this movie. I kind of like, I never had high hopes for it, but I felt that because I didn't really care all that much, because this is not a franchise I care about, that I might have liked it a little bit better. And like clockwork, with so many things that performed under my expectations. And granted, I have very high standards. I'm a hard moviegoer to please, but I think that that there's got to be something said for a post-production of a film, because that is 95% of the battle sometimes. And this was a post-production that was rushed. And for all the crap that I give Scream 6 especially, I do believe that that's the movie that they set out to make, whereas I Know What You Did Last Summer 2025 is absolutely not the movie that it was supposed to be. And even worse, now that deleted scenes have surfaced that show stuff that actually looked really good and added context to the story, and you wonder, like, why was that taken out? Why were these things changed? So something's got to be said for the direction and the instincts, and I think that this one was just, a huge misfire. So I'm gonna say stand him up, but it's not that was just awful, because I don't think anything could come close to Always Know What You Did Last Summer, unless Urban Legends Bloody Mary is just as wretched. But yeah, like, I'm pretty confident to say that this is how I feel right now about these franchises. Anyway, thank you for putting up with my bullshit here. If you want to check out some more of my tier list rankings, you can head over to one of these playlists over here. Until next time, I've been Zach Cherry, and I'll be right back.